And all right, we're good. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Actually, I'm just going to jump right into my my slide deck here, and we'll kind of bounce back and forth. So we are a Google school, and we've done a lot on Google Meet. So I have used Zoom many times, but I am definitely a little more proficient in Google Meet. So I apologize if things get a little choppy here and there, but I'm going to share my screen here. And at this point now, you should be seeing my slide deck. So like I said, I did put up that tiny URL for you, so you can go ahead and follow along. Basically, what I'm going to do is just kind of jump into some of the tools that teachers in my district have used in the primary grades. My role in the district is I'm our technology coach. So I meet with teachers, we plan, we set kind of a goal that we want to accomplish over a couple week time period. And then I'll model a lesson, co-teach, and then kind of sit back as they teach and kind of join in here and there. So I've worked a lot in the primary grades over the last 2 years. I worked a lot with the first grade teacher. This year I'm actually in 3 kindergarten classes, which has been kind of an eye-opening experience because for 10 years I taught 8th grade. So it's been really enjoyable. I think what's even crazier is one of those kindergarten classes, my twin sons are in that class. So it's really interesting that they have to view me not as their dad for a moment and as the teacher. So that's been a little interesting, a little while, but it's really good. So I have, and if someone could just maybe like give me a thumbs up just to make sure that the screen sharing is going well. Perfect. Again, I'm Google Meet, very, very Google Meet. So I just want to make sure with Zoom here. On this slideshow here, or excuse me, this slide, this is my contact information. So that's my Twitter handle. I try to update. If I come across cool things, I just retweet a lot. I put some things up. If people in my district ask me to help them come up with something, a lot of times I'll just throw it on Twitter too, because chances are if someone in my district needs it, someone else might need it as well. I really don't update my Instagram all that often. I did for a little while and then kind of stopped, but then you can always email me if you have any questions about anything in this presentation or just in general. Feel free to reach out to me. I do check my Twitter a lot as well, so feel free to connect there and we can share ideas. Ooh. 1 second. All right, let me see if I can let someone in here. Okay. So today's agenda, we're going to go over Google Slides, some things you can do in Google Slides, so drag and drops, and also I'm going to talk about Slides Mania. I'm not sure how many people know about Slides Mania, but it is a phenomenal website where you can get free templates of Google Slides. And what's really great about Slides Mania is there are quite a few that are already interactive. So there are quite a few that the creator of Slides Mania made it so that you as the teacher can just almost customize it, share it out with your students, and then it's done for you, which is really nice. We'll go over some things in Google Forms you can do, Google Drawings, and then Jamboard. So we'll talk about those, and we will play around with those, and hopefully by the end of this session, you will have some things that you can bring back to your classroom. So the first thing I want to talk about is Google Slides. My favorite Google tool is Google Slides. I try to use it as much as possible. I try to share it with teachers as much as possible in my district. So I want to talk about drag and drop fun. That's kind of what I've labeled it as, just kind of for a lack of a better term. But one of the things that a lot of people don't know about in Google Slides is, wait, let me backtrack. I think when we think of Google Slides, we think of just presentations. We think of putting it up on the board. But there are so many ways of using it interactively. And I think a lot of teachers will, purchase things on like Teacher Pay Teachers or other websites that are essentially just interactive drag and drops. But that can be done in Google Slides, and it can be done, for free if you have, the G Suite for Education or if you're a Google user. So I want to show you some of those things that I've created. I put a folder here. So if you have the slideshow, the slide deck I share with you, you can open these up. These are just ones that I've used with teachers in my district. So a Halloween drag and drop, St. Patrick's Day. And then we actually had one of our art teachers, I did one for Mondrian with her, where the students would drag and drop different shapes and colors and lines to create that art that replicated his style of work. So let me show you what I mean by this drag and drop here. So if you'll notice, this is, I'm using Google Slides. I'm not using any, fancy drag and drop software. I'm using Google Slides here. And the one thing I want to point out is how I have over on the side here, you'll see I've got what look like stacks. Okay, they look like stacks of things that my students can then manipulate. So what I have is basically a canvas that I can share out to my students, that I can create for them and then put in Google Classroom, or I can email to them, however you communicate, and they can complete this. Again, it kind of takes the place of something you might see on Teachers Pay Teachers or other websites. And the students really enjoy it. It's interactive, it's fun, and you can completely customize it. You can make it you can make a template essentially, and then just change out for the holiday or for the topic of whatever it is you're teaching. And the students get used to it that way. So in that first grade class that I was talking about, we introduced this to them using one topic, and then we kind of reused it. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We used it over and over. So the students got used to how to use it, the function of it. And it became something that was easier for the teacher to create. It was fun for the students, and it was easier for them to know what they're doing. So I'm going to show you what I mean by this. So I'm actually going to create a new presentation here so that you can see how we go about actually this whole creation process. So the one thing some people don't know about in Google Slides that I always like to share is you can change the actual layout of the slide. So it's going to default to this widescreen here. It's going to default to that presentation mode because it's defaulting so that you can put it up on a smart board or some type of presentation board. But this gray space is actually like your space where you can make things interactive. So you want some gray space. You want to expand that gray space for yourself and for your students. So what you would do is go to File and you go to Page Setup, and you'll see that it defaults that widescreen. But I like the standard 4:3 because if I apply that, what it does then is I have all this gray space here that I can actually put things for my students to use. It's almost like, this is the piece of paper in front of them on their desk, but these are all the things that are in their pencil box for them to grab, all their supplies. So you want to have that space for them. And what you can do is you can change the background to make it more interactive. So if you actually go to choose image, you can search Google. And what's nice about the Google image search here is what they pull up, you can use. Okay, so they're going to pull up the images that you're allowed to use. So let's say we just put in graphic organizer, just to give you an example. I can see what we have here. So let's say I really like this notebook here. I'm going to have my students sort. So I want 2 sections anyways. What it's going to do is going to change that background. Now notice, because the layout of the slide, I'm going to have this text box here, but I can simply right click on here. I can apply the layout of blank. So now there's no text box that's already there. I can start adding things in for myself. I can start putting headers or titles for my students. So let's say I'm working on living and non-living things. So I know this was something that I worked with a first grade teacher last year over living and non-living things. And I want my students to sort that. What I can do is put a text box here, and we'll make this side living. And over here, we will make this non-living. Okay. So now we have 2 different sides, living, non-living. And this can be anything. Again, I'm just using this as an example because it's something that I actually did with students in first grade. And now comes the fun part. So now I have 2 pretty clear, sections. This section's for living, this is for non-living. Obviously, this is something you would explain to your students. And then I start adding in images or words for them to sort. So I can go back to insert image, and I can search the web. If you have images that you've already saved your computer, you can go that route as well, or you saved your drive. You don't have to search Google. I just am a big advocate. If it's there for me to use, I like to use it. So let's type dog. That's a good example of something that's living. Okay, so we'll insert that. We're going to make him a little smaller over here. Okay, and then just for another example, I'll find something that's non-living. So I'm going to go to insert image, search the web, and let's just put in chair. Okay. So as far as I know, chair is not living. And again, this is just an example for me to show you, but you could actually, you could use images you have, you can do all sorts of things with this. And then now these are, these images are in the gray space, and you can add text over here. So I could actually write the word dog, or, I could write the word chair. So if you're actually, working on recognition of words and letters and spelling, you could go that route as well. And then the kids will just simply click it and they'll drag it to where it belongs. And what's nice is if you push this out through Google Classroom and you make a copy for each student, you'll see their work and you can almost see it in real time. You can check on them. So you can have in Google Classroom, you can have that page open and you can see what they're adding and what they're sorting. So that's kind of just that basic sorting of living, non-living. There's this one image is going to go to living, this one image is going into non-living, that type of thing. Now, if you wanted to do it for counting, like I did, I showed you that example for the Halloween, you would probably want to, so let me go back to that exact slideshow here so I can show you, and I'll show you how you would duplicate those images so that, we'll do it the St. Patrick's Day one, so that it's like a stack that your students are pulling from. So you'll notice here, I'm practicing counting. So 1 shamrock, 2 pots of gold, 3 leprechauns. Well, if I want them to be able to have 2 pots of gold or 3 leprechauns or 4 hats, I need to have at least that amount of that image so they can grab it. So if you notice when I click and drag, there's still another one there. It's almost like it's an infinite pile. And the way you do that is actually rather simple. It's just not something that is, it's not like an overall function of Google Slides. You kind of have to do a little workaround, but it's not that difficult. So what you will do is you'll choose your image. So I'm going to add a new image just so I can show you. So let's say I want to find another pot of gold. I'll search it. Okay, we'll use this one here. And something to consider too is if you don't want a background around your image, when you search with PNG also in the title, because PNG images generally do not have a background. The background's transparent. So that way you don't get that like white square or rectangle around it. So let's talk about that stack of that image. So I've got my first image. Let's say this is the size I want. Now what I do is I duplicate that. So Control D. And you'll notice every time I press Control D, I get another one of those pot of golds or whatever that image is. And then I'm going to simply click and drag over so that they're all highlighted. And you'll notice there's a square on every single one. And then this is the part that like is the mind-blowing portion of it. If I right click here, I can go to align horizontally and center, and then align vertically and top. And now you don't see all 6 or 7 of those pot of golds. They're on top of each other. You can essentially made like a deck of cards. So now I can drag it over so my students can practice 2 pots of gold or 3 leprechauns or whatever it might be for that activity. So those are just 2 ways that I like to use Google Slides. Let me jump out of here. Okay. I'm a big fan of using Google Slides so that it's not just for the presentation. The drag and drop portion is really important. I think it's really cool to kind of add that pile of things so your students can practice counting or sorting or whatever it might be. I'm going to check, is there any questions in the chat? I think we're good there. I did also want to show you, so in that presentation, so I'm going to jump back into sharing my screen there, I apologize. Slides Mania. I just want to show you quickly Slides Mania because it's a really, really cool website and it's free and it's awesome. So I'm not sure, some of you are probably using Slides Mania already, but it is fabulous. So what I did is I linked it right to the Slides Mania for choice boards and games. So what you would do is you would find the template that you want. So here's like a true or false template. We've got find the treasure. And what's really nice, the creator of Slides Mania, what she does is she links the slides. So like, let's say I open this treasure chest here, it's going to link to the slide 1 or whatever it might be. So you would kind of go through and you manipulate the content of those treasure chests or of those slides that are there. But she set up the bulk of the work for you. She already went through and did the linking and made it really, really fun for your students. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on Slides Mania, but it is definitely If you've never checked out Slides Mania, I highly encourage you to do it. It's just a fun way too to change up your templates if you are doing a presentation, or thematically for whatever lesson it is that you're doing with your students. It's kind of a cool way to just change it up a little bit. So play around with that. She's got all these topics up here. This for our by EDU from EDU is really cool, because what that actually is teachers or tech tech people like me, whatever it is, they can actually submit templates to her and she will put them on her website. So it's a really cool way of just sharing with the educational community some templates that you come up with it as well. So if you ever come up with one, you could reach out to her and see if she would put it on her website. It's pretty cool. She does that. Okay. Let's see here. So let me jump back into our presentation here. So that's Google Slides. Again, just a couple things. So that drag and drop is my favorite part. Slides Mania is really cool to check out. Google Drawings is also really, really powerful. So if you noticed when I was doing that drag and drop, the background that I had for the counting, for the shamrocks or for the St. Patrick's Day as well as the Halloween, I created in Google Drawings. So I actually went ahead and I created that in Google Drawings initially, and then that's what I set as the background. So when I was doing the sorting with the dog, the living, non-living, I just found a background from Google, but you can always create one in Google Drawings ahead of time and use that as your background as well. But what you can do in the primary grades, after you've had something set up, you can make choice boards, or you can do some interactives as well. So the first thing I'll show you is a choice board here and how you can go about creating that. So this is one that we set up with that first grade teacher that I was working with. We call it free time choices. You might have a different word for it, but essentially it's when we were walking around working with students. There were always a couple students that maybe got through the lesson a little quicker than others, or they had some time where they, instead of first grader just sitting there, we wanted to give them something that they could do, that they were still practicing their digital skills, their math skills, their language arts skills, whatever it was, and it was fun. So in Google Drawings, we created this choice board where to them, it just looks like an image that has, some letter blocks, some math symbols, some keyboarding, a dog. But what it is, these are actually linked images. So if they clicked on the dog, it was going to take them to this Kids National Geographic website where they could, learn about some animals, read about some information they might be interested in. If they clicked on the ABC, it would take them to ABC Yeah, where they could play different games. And you can definitely modify it. You can make it so it goes to a specific game or goes to a specific animal's information, based on, if let's say you're talking about reptiles, you could have a picture of 4 different reptiles and they would just click on that image and it would take them to that specific page that you linked to about this reptile and that reptile. But I want to show you in Google Drawings kind of how to set this up. So to get to Google Drawings, you can go to drawings.google.com, or in your drive, you can go to new, and then go to more, and you would go to Google Drawings. For some reason, Google Drawings is not in the waffle grid. It's not in the apps launcher. I don't know if they're ever going to add it in. It would be really handy if they did. But the easiest way for me, I think, is to go through your drive. And then that way too, it automatically saves it to your drive. You know what's going to be in your drive, whatever you create. So if I wanted to create that choice board for my students, first I'll just give it a title here. And then I can start just playing around. If I right click on this canvas here, I can change the background. And here, the difference between slides and drawings is you can't change the background to an image. You can change it to a color. So I'm going to just make it this kind of gray subtle color here. And you can do gradient effects. There's all different things you can do. And then I can start adding in those different text boxes or different images for the choice board, if that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to go insert, and I want to do word art kind of just to make my title stand out a little bit. So we'll call this free time. Make it like pop out, ooh, free time. Okay, and then you can kind of click and drag, and you can go up here, you can change the color of that text. So if you really want it to stand out, you can change the color of the border. You can even change the font itself. So you can do whatever you want. You can customize that title. Another thing to always kind of keep in mind in Google Drawings is sometimes the arrow keys on your keyboard are your best friends, because when we try to click and drag things in the right shape or right space or right spot, it kind of like moves too far. But if you actually just click on whatever it is you want to move, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard, and they will move up, down, right, left. And if you press shift into it, it makes it a small little move. So if you're like pressing the up arrow and it's too much, you can just press shift up and it just gradually goes up for you. So just kind of some little things you could play around with. So now I can start adding those images in. So let's say I want to link to ABC. Yeah. So I'm going to find an image on Google because that's what I like to do. I'm going to search the web. I'm just going to type in ABC blocks because to me it represents ABC pretty well. And I will click here. And again, if you can find an image that's a PNG, that's nice because then you don't have that background. And I'm going to make the size. So I'm just going to change the size here so that it, you know, for whatever I want it to look like. Here's the part now where you link it. So what you have a couple different options. You can press Control K and it will automatically pop up the link block where you can just paste a link in or start to type it. Or if you don't use keyboard shortcuts, you can right click and you can, actually you can't, you can go up here and you can go to insert link and it will do the same thing. What's cool about Google is if you start to even type in the website name, it will find the link for you. So if I type in ABC and give it a second, it's going to pull it up for me. I don't even have to like copy and paste it unless I want to copy and paste a specific game on ABC. But other than that, I can just start to type it. I press apply. And now when my students click on it, they can go to that. It will take them to ABC. And we'll add another one here. We'll insert, let's say we want to do, some type of keyboarding activity. This might pull up. There we go. Cool. Just for an example, we'll throw this in here. But again, I can throw this image in here, and then to link it, I would either press Control K or insert that link, and then I would type in whatever that website is that I want it to go to. So it might be keyboarding. Let's just say it's keyboarding.com or something. But then that way, your students will just be able to be directed right there. Now, one thing I like to do, and you'll notice on my example here, it's a PDF. I like it being a PDF because then these images are stuck. When they click on it, it takes them, the image doesn't move, it takes them where they need to be. And it's almost like for me, when I save something as a PDF, that's me like saying, here's my final copy. Now I can always go back to Google Drawings and I can always change things up and then just make another PDF. But I like to share things out in PDF with my students because then they can't manipulate, they can't click and drag and move things around. So to do that, you just go to File, Download as a PDF document, and then now you would add that PDF document to your Google Classroom or however you share information with your students. And then when they click on that ABC, it's going to take them to that website. It's not going to take them, they're not going to be able to click and drag it and move it around. It will just jump them to where they need to be. Let me get back here. So that's the choice board. So again, for the choice board, what I did is we just kind of went in, set it up with some images, set it up with some links, and then saved it as a PDF so the kids could kind of jump around. Okay, so I just got a chat here of how do you lock things on the page, and I'm guessing that was with Google Drawings. Yep, that was 1 minute ago. So again, to save it as a PDF, what you would do is, let me get back here as an example. So if I just shared it as a Google drawing, it's not locked in, it would drag. But to save it as a PDF, you go to File, and then Download, and then you have the option there as a PDF document. And then what you would do from there is just upload that PDF document to your Google Classroom, so that your students would only have access to that. Or if you use Google Sites, whatever it is where your students go when they're done, they would just click that PDF. So I hope that answered your question. The other thing I put on there for Google are interactives. So it's essentially the same thing. So the choice board is making, it's not the same thing, but using the same tool. The choice board is making something that's locked in as a PDF that students can go back to, and it's basically a picture that they click on, it takes them somewhere else. However, interactives are simply that. It's more of the interactive piece. It's where it kind of goes back to what we did in Google Slides, where we are dragging, we're dropping, we're putting things into blank spaces or whatever it might be, so that your students have more of that hands-on It's kind of something, like I said, that you might buy from a website or see on a different website, but you can kind of create it yourself. So I put this example here of a mathematical one, but you can do this as a former language arts teacher. You can do this for fill in, the sentence with different parts of, adding adjectives to a sentence or adding a noun or whatever it might be. You're the teacher that you can set this up for your student. So this one that I created here is just a quick example for math. So I have this, blank plus blank equals blank, and I have blank minus blank or whatever. And I'm going to go ahead and what I did ahead of time is I went through and I found, I actually created the math problem first before I did the blanks so that I knew that I had the right numbers up here for the expression. And then all the students have to do is just click and drag. So they're going to click just like they did before. They'll bring this down here. And if they have a hard time clicking and dragging, if they click it, again, they can use their keyboard to drag as well. So I know working in these kindergarten classrooms that I've been working in, a lot of the students, they'll even try and do two hands where they'll click and they're with one hand, they'll drag with the other, and then it gets a little crazy. So one thing I tell them is, hey, practice using your clicking and dragging when you can, but when you hit that, if you get a little frustrated or it's not working, just simply click it. And then you can, and when you have that blue square around, and then you can just use your keyboard and you can go that route as well. So that kind of helps with the frustration aspect of it. But I like these these interactive things in Google Drawings because it helps. I think it's good, like, test prep and things, because they're expected to drag and drop. And they're not always using touchscreen devices. So I think it's good to have that practice in Google Drawings or in Google Slides so that they can get used to that feeling when they're answering questions. So again, I created this one just using math expressions, but you can do this for language arts, for science, for social studies, for art. I mean, the possibilities are endless. And what's really nice is this can essentially just be your template now. I can just make a copy of this Google drawing and I can just change the numbers. So if I wanted to do a quick, interactive every Monday morning or every Tuesday morning, I can simply just change the numbers. I can change the, make this a multiple. If we get to multiplication, I can change it from addition to multiplication, but that template itself is already there for you. So it's a matter of, 10, 15 minutes of changing a couple things up here and there, so that, it's easier for you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. The way I set this up, so I'm just going to create a new one real quick for you, is I went to a new drawing here. And then again, just like with the one I showed you before, I changed the background color. So I just right clicked, went to background, and you can do like gradient. So it gives it a little more depth if you want. It's totally up to you. And again, you can always change that up each time. You can make it more customized given the season. So it's beautiful in Northeast Ohio right now with all the fall colors. So maybe I'll just go with this orange to kind of replicate what it looks like outside. And then I can just simply add in some lines. Okay, so if I wanted to do, my addition, I could add in lines. If I don't want to use the line feature up here, because sometimes it gets a little crooked or whatever, I can honestly just go to text box and I can just click and make a line as well. Okay. The reason I personally like to use the line feature is because I like to make sure that it's completely straight. And then after I create one, all I do is I press Control D a couple times and it duplicates it. And then now I can literally just click and drag them to where I want. So I want this one here, and I know I'm going to want this one here after a plus sign. So that's why I do that, and then I just duplicate it. So I'm not trying to do that tedious line drawing over and over. I just duplicate it. And if you don't want them all on here while you're trying to arrange them, you can just move them. You can, get rid of them. You can highlight them and scoot them over so that they're not in your way. You can put them in the gray space. And then to add those directions, you would just go up here, create a text box. So, drag the noun to where it belongs in the sentence or whatever your directions might be. And then to add those words in or to add those numbers or those things that you're actually dragging, you're dragging, dropping, you're interactive with, I just use text boxes. So I just add a text box here and I have dog. And if you want to have like a border, so you can change the size here by clicking and dragging. And then these tools right here, these are your border color and weight. So I might make it stand out a little bit with the black border and make it a little heavier weight. And then again, power of duplication. If you just do Control D, you don't need to reinvent the weight and the color. It will do it for you. You just have to change the word, whatever it might be. And then down here where you would have your sentence, okay, you could do your fill in the blank, you know, and add your text boxes in for the rest of the words. And the kids would just drop them down to wherever it is that they belong in that sentence. And again, what's nice is the first time you make this is going to be the most work, because then you can just duplicate, or you can just copy this template for each week if you want to do this every Monday morning or every Tuesday morning or whatever it might be. So that's some ways you can use Google Drawings. And I keep doing this from the teacher perspective, but you can have your students create these as well. Your students can use Google Slides to you know, create their own drag and drop or create their own, you know, presentation pieces. They can use Google Drawings to create their own interactive. One of the things we did last year with those students in first grade is they were setting up, they were showing relations of where things are. So they kind of create a little map of their bedroom, and they did it in Google Drawings. They used the shapes to create like a bed. So they would click and they would drag and create a bed. And then some of them would actually then change the colors to whatever the color of their, you know, their comforter was. And what was really funny is what some of the students were doing. If you go to insert image, one of your options is camera, and they were actually taking a picture of their self, like of their face, and putting it on their bed as like where their pillow would be. So we knew exactly where they were, you know, sleeping as well. So it takes some modeling, you know, it takes some modeling. And I think after these kids use these interactive drag and drops, or these things that you set up for them, they become, you know, more used to using the keyboard to manipulate or using the dragging and dropping. And so then they start to create their own. It becomes a little more natural for them. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I am here to say that, you know, these primary student kids, they can do it. They really can. I know sometimes people don't think they can, but they definitely can. It just takes a lot of modeling and patience. And you know, walking them through it. So that's Google Drawings. That's also my little speech there. Let me get back to our presentation here, and let's see what we got. So does anyone have any questions before we move on about Google Drawings? I think I answered the one about the PDF. I think we're okay there. Okay. Google Forms. So there's a couple things you can do with Google Forms that I'm a big fan of. Choose your own adventure, or basically what that is sending people to different sections of a Google form based on their answers. So we did this in fourth grade. So let me show you an example here of one that we did in fourth grade. We were talking about rapid change versus gradual change of the ecosystem. And what's cool is, if you'll notice here, so let's say I click rapid change and I click next. Now everything that I'm reading about and all the questions I'm answering only deal with rapid change. So you'll notice it says, you know, rapid ecosystem change. So now I chose that adventure. And I don't know if you read those directions before, but it basically said, hey, what do you want to know more about? And I wanted to know more about rapid change. So I chose that. And so as I keep going, it's only about rapid change. Okay? I'm only, you know, learning about examples in science that were rapid change. However, if I go back and I chose gradual change, you'll see that my response or what is popping up is different. So now my examples here, now what I'm reading about are examples of gradual change. And your students can go back, they can do rapid change first, and then they can do gradual change or whatever it might be. But it's kind of fun to put the, you know, the ball in their court and give them that, you know, choose your own learning path. And you could, you know, this is very content specific, but you could make it like a little bit of a mystery story, like the choose your own adventure, choose your own ending stories that were, you know, really popular back in the day. So to do this, it takes a little setting up in the beginning. It really does, but it's not impossible by any means. So let me show you how to do that. So I'm just going to create a new Google form here to show you. My favorite shortcut in Google is the .new. So if you don't know that, if you do forms.new or sheets.new or whatever it might be, it will just take you to a brand new form or brand new sheet, whatever it is. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to give it a title. So let's say, you know, sample, choose your, or let's just say sample. And then you would give, you know, some description. You would give some direction. And that's where we had in that last example, excuse me, that's where we had, you know, choose gradual change or choose, you know, that rapid change based on what you want to know more about. So you would tell your students in this description up here, kind of what they're doing. Then you set up your sections first. So my first section might just be choose your adventure. And I would have gradual, rapid. So I have my my two topics, whatever it might be. Oh, goodness, there we go. Then I have to set up all my sections ahead of time. So I need to, before I start making it so it jumps from section to section, I need to go through it. I need to make actual divided sections based on those topics. So if I click add section here, I'm going to title this one gradual. And then I can start adding in different questions that relate to gradual, or I can start importing questions, adding in images, whatever it might be. So let's say I want to, add an image of a gradual change. I can do that. So not sure if this is a great example, but we're just going to put that in there for it. And then from there, I can add, more questions. Here's the part that I want to show you though. Here's the part that is how you set it up so that it goes to that section. If I go back up to, let's actually add one more section. Let's do our rapid section too. Okay, so now I have 3 sections. I've got section 1 is my overall, here's your directions, here are your adventures you can choose from. Section 2 is that first adventure choice. Section 3, rapid change, is my second adventure choice. Well, all you do now, if you click here so that you get your editing capabilities back, and you click the snowman, the 3 little dots here, you can have it go to section based on answer. So if you click that, all you have to do now is change this to section 2 that's all about gradual, and change this to section 3 that is all about rapid change. That's it. You can get more specific in these sections and have, questions that take you to even further sections that you set up. But now when I take this, let's say I'm a student and I click here and I go to gradual, it should take me to that gradual section. Okay. But if I go back and I wanted to learn more about rapid and I click next, it will take me to that section. Now I didn't add any content in there except for just the title. So that's why you see that there. But that's all it is. So it's really fun. Like with your students, you can have them just kind of, you can set it up. So, especially let's just say, for example, with Halloween coming up and you want to do some type of, teaching plot and little adventures of, those rising actions, they could almost choose their own rising actions. And then based on the rising action they choose and they click next, it would take them to the next event in the story or whatever it might be. So again, it might be a lot of front loading, especially for something that in depth. But it's really cool. It's a really cool way to use Google Forms kind of in a, interactive gamified mode, if you will, with your students so that they have the opportunity to, choose their learning path too, which is really important. And that's kind of, both these examples are essentially, I use the same idea there. So for both of these examples, I used going to a section based on an answer. So you can kind of play around with those as well if you wanted to see that. The last thing I want to show you is Jamboard. What's cool about, if you are a Google district, Jamboard is now part of Google Meet. So if you use Google Meets as your way of communicating with students or parents, Jamboard is actually embedded now. It's a digital whiteboard, so it's part of Google Meet, which is pretty cool. But if you don't know anything about Jamboard, like I said before, it's a digital whiteboard. And so what you do is if you go to Jamboard, and Jamboard is in your waffle grid, it's a yellow, it's this symbol right here. You create jams. And so a jam is just an interactive canvas that your students can add images to. You can add images to, and your students can manipulate them. They can move them around. You can add text. You can add sticky notes, so little post-it notes, and that's how you maybe would add links as well. So you can add a link via a sticky note. There's so much you can do with Jamboard. I just threw this on the presentation because it's one of those things that I have found with the teachers I work with. It's a really good way, like you kind of have to play around with it to see how you would use it best in your learning or your educational setting. But what's cool about Jamboard is if you notice up here, it says 1 of 1, but I can actually set up like up to 20 frames in Jamboard. So if I have 20 students, I could actually go ahead and set up a Jamboard, and each of them could have their own page, but would all be in this sample jam. It would all be in this one jam so that it's in one spot for me to go back and look at their work. And you can share jams right to Google Classroom, just like you would a doc or a sheet. You would just, choose your share settings. You can make a copy for each student, or they could all edit this one if you have them on that same for their own page. Or if you wanted students to, this is kind of a good way to do like remote group work. They can all be on the same jam and they could be adding their information all to this one page. So they could be adding some sticky notes. And they can choose the color based on the topic or whatever it might be. They can draw images that go along with whatever the topic is. So what a lot of the teachers in our district are doing if they're using Jamboard is they're putting the directions in Google Classroom, like, hey, here are four bullet points of what I'd like to see on your group's jam. And then they let the creativity kind of, for the students, they give them that, here's the 4 things I need to see, but then the students can go in and add things to it. Again, you can change the background. This is pretty cool based on your content. So you can change it to kind of have the grid effect. So if you're working, in math especially, okay, but there's also lines for like line paper. So Jamboard's really cool. There's a lot you can do with it. Again, it's one of those things that I would really recommend you play around with your students or before you would share with your students so you can see what's best for your educational setting. So let me get out of here. I did put this link here. So it's a shareable doc. So if anyone creates like a drag and drop or an interactive and they want to share it with anyone else that's in this Zoom call right now or Zoom in this presentation, feel free to. You obviously don't have to, but if there's something that you would like to share with people, you are more than welcome to do that. You can just give it a quick little topic, description, and then the actual shareable link, you can throw it there. If I were giving this presentation in person like we originally planned, there would have been more time for you to actually sit and create, and then we would share examples, we would show examples, and so that's why I threw this doc in here. So if you wanted to do that, you could still do it. And then again, I used a Slides Mania template, so giving credit to where credit is due. Slides Mania is phenomenal, so I highly recommend you check it out. Let me stop my sharing here. So that's my presentation as far as what I had in the slide deck. So there are still about 5 minutes left. So if anyone, or a couple, about 5-6 minutes, that I wanted to kind of open up if you had any questions. So if you wanted to put them in the chat or if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead and we can answer those questions. If I'll give it a few minutes. If no one has any questions, then give you a couple minutes to stretch your legs before your next session. I think the next one starts at 9:50, so you have a couple minutes there. Like I said too, I am going to be, this session was recorded, so I'll put the recording link in the that sheet that was provided for us. Let's see here. How do you make the Google slide gray space larger? So let me show you that real quick. What you would do is, let me jump back to sharing my screen. You go to the page setup in Google Slides. So let me get out of this presentation. Oh, something like that. What's going on? Weird. Okay, let me try again. Sorry, for some reason, let's see if I can share it now. There we go. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. What you would do is you just go to File, and then you go down to Page Setup, and then it defaults to this widescreen, but if you go to Standard 4:3, or you can customize it if you wanted even more gray space, but the standard 4:3 and apply gives you a pretty good amount of that gray space that you can then add things to. Let's see. How do you make the Google? Okay, so we got that. So the only questions I'm seeing are about how we locked that information for the PDF and then making more gray space. So I think if there's no other questions, you're all, we're good. But I will stay on here for a little longer if anyone else has any more questions. And feel free, like I said, you can follow on Twitter and reach out to me that way. You can always just message me on Twitter. You can email me. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always willing to help. So my contact information was on that first slide. So I am going to end the recording now. And everybody, maybe I'll see you in another session, but if not, I hope you all have a great day. Thank you for joining. I hope you all have a wonderful day.